It's the 22nd of 2021. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm your host, the nuclear proctologist.org. And we got a poll tonight. Should nuclear or schools of mass destruction, nuclear universities, be prosecuted for crimes against humanity and extinction event known as omnicide? That's what an omnicide is. It's an extinction event where it attacks all species. Honey, I promised to protect you. Well, he broke his first promise. And that he loves her. And if he loved her, he wouldn't have took her to a nuclear meltdown, would he? How do you get that stupid? How does that actually work? I guess you watch TV a lot? I don't know. He proposed to his wife at Chernobyl. Literally the stupidest thing imaginable, and the media ran with it. Students tour deliver fun experience in Fukushima's devastated, think about that word, devastated, Fukushima, which is right 2 kilometers away from multiple nuclear ongoing meltdowns. And children who should be skateboarding or something, not nuclear scientists, not nuclear academics, not nuclear students, but high school students, 16, 17-year-old students, university students, and other young people operated, that's absurd, operated a 2-day tour, 2 days at a time for the group, of a nuclear meltdown surrounding areas. Is in October, November to promote, this is university students and other young people, which is high school students, where residents are still recovering from the accident. Well, they're not there. They're not there because the place is, you got to go past 60 million one-ton bags to get there of radiation. The tours named Pellet Camp Fukushima were organized by the General Incorporated Association F-ATRAs, which promotes tourism in a nuclear wasteland. You can simulate shopping there in the ghost towns. It's pretty cool, I guess. In a nuclear wasteland. 21-year-olds, an intern for the association and student at the university, planned the tours to let the participants experience the fun side of the area through various activities. The fun side of a nuclear meltdown. Wow, that's brilliant. I never would have come up with that one. What's next? You're going to go and throw rocks at the homeless? Tasting home-cooked dishes prepared by food specialists from the nuclear wasteland, and practicing early morning open-air yoga 2 miles from ongoing nuclear meltdowns. Sounds like a good time, man. So maybe I'm crazy, but I think that's wrong. The association members also guided participants to abandoned homes in the town. Yeah, come on down and see the abandoned town. It's mad cool. Which was evacuated after the accident and is still, of course, evacuated. And they sent people in with paper suits to fix a nuclear meltdown to homeless and destitute. According to the association, many participants said they want to visit Fukushima again. Oh, and a male participant said the area is a place full of hope and potential that will be greater than how it was before. Well, it used to look like that, and now it looks like this. And guess what? In 1,000 years, it'll look like that. A 24-year-old student, an Indian student at Tohoku University Graduate School, developed the tours with a Japanese counterpart. So why is a 24-year-old Indian student promoting tours in the nuclear wasteland for? Credits? At the School of Mass Destruction. You came out of India where you had no hope. You went into a nuclear wasteland where nobody has any hope, and you brought in more people into the danger zone and poisoned them so you can get a paycheck. You murder people every day so you can get a paycheck. In an actual nuclear meltdown. It takes a lot, I suppose. And they communicate on a messaging app called Slack. And so what do? You count all the bags? So what they do is they write on the bags, Dana is wrong, on millions of one-ton bags. You spend all day, 24 hours a day, they don't pee or sleep or eat or nothing. And you just write Dana is wrong on every single bag. She's crazy. Association's members are scheduled to hold a tour again next year. Next year they're going to have swinging ropes from the death machine, the Medusa at number 4. The whole world is actually crazy. So it shows you the nuclear industry is a lunatic. Nuclear industry is like, this is awesome. They're crazy. The nuclear industry never go there. The nuclear industry is not taking people in there. Some student from Fukushima University. South Korea hold emergency meetings over Japan's Fukushima water release plan. South Korea. Treated. Did I mention it was treated? That's one of the rare headlines where it doesn't say treated water, by the way. Don't worry, they got it in the first sentence. Treated radioactive water. Which, of course, you can't treat radioactive water. You can't take the radiation out of the water and make the water just tritiated water, which is still really bad for you, by the way. But this is not what's going on at all. I'll show you. The country's nuclear safety chief, which is some bizarre, twisted, sick joke there, affirmed their stances on the matter. Yeah, they're going to dump it in the Pacific. Damn pesky activists. The reality was that, I'll show you. It's better to show you than try to explain this away. It was the second time South Korea used its Nuclear Safety Commission, which is, they've been there about 70 years. That sounds about right. It's their second time they ever used them. As a means to send a message to Japan. South Korea is like, we don't like this very much at all. Now, there's zero possibilities they don't know the truth. It's the possibilities of them not knowing the truth that South Korean nuclear safety commissions are zero. Zero. It's Nuclear Safety Commission. Well, if you're ever going to start hanging people in the nuclear industry, best start right there. I'll tell you what. Currently, it has 32 spots in coastal waters where it checks the level of tritium. So South Korea and China are participating in the cover-up of what's had taken place by playing along with the narrative of tritium. When you hear the nuclear safety of South Korea, government agencies talking about tritium, you have lost South Korea. It is lost now to the industry. You can never get it back without exterminating them. Tanks at the crippled Japan nuclear plant leaked highly radioactive water August the 20th, 2013. There was 1,000 tanks. Well, Dana, how many tanks they got now? That's a great question. That's what that was. They actually got 1,000 tanks. Not 1,001, but 1,000. Well, Dana, how could they? In 2013, they had 1,000 tanks, Dana. Yeah, I know. Well, guess what? In 2014, they had 1,200. I mean, they got again now, right now, 1,000. Huh. In 2017, Australia reported that there was 900 tanks. Large and densely packed tanks that could spill if an earthquake or a tsunami strikes. Try walking like that. I dare you. Try walking around with both heels on the ground a single time. It can't be done. Fukushima, Japan will have to dump the radioactive water into the Pacific. 2019, they got 1,000 tanks in that line right there at the very beginning. 2021, this year in April, they got 1,000 tanks. Now, I counted the tanks, and they got 750. And that's counting the small ones up there as individual tanks. There's not 1,000 tanks there. It's a game, right? There is no tanks. If you fill up the tanks at 2 sieverts a liter or whatever, it's probably much more than that, certainly. But that's what they admit to. Then, first off, you can't filter it because you can never get near the filter or the building again. So 20 minutes after you turn that on, you're done. And the tanks are not thick enough to shield you from this kind of radiation. And so the fact that they built another tank right alongside of it means the tanks are empty, because you can't do that. And if you did do it, there's an interaction that happens, an X-ray effect, a Bromson lung effect. You physically can't build the tanks and fill them up with high-level radiation, that water that you're pouring over the reactor cores. Another problem with that would be is if you're pouring it over the reactor core and then sucking it up and putting it in a tank, that heavy metal is going to sink to the bottom of the tank. Then what happens is the neutron bombardment causes a chain reaction, burns a hole through the tank, like Hanford done and the Mayak in Ukraine done. Central High School, that was when I was talking at the very beginning, my apologies. Central Japan high school students see nuclear power as dangerous, and 18% seen it as necessary. But see how they done the headline? Very, very clever. Those little Japanese are some sly, man. Those nuclear Japanese little creatures. Who carried out a survey, students, about nuclear power among high school students, where many of the Japan's nuclear power plants are concentrated, are seen here at high school, December the 9th, 2021. That's outrageous they would have high school students, and it's even more outrageous they would run that in the media, performing that kind of... it's a useless poll. It shows the brainwashing in one sense. A survey of about 1,800 high school students, carried out by high school students in their central Japan cities, brought to the surface mixed feelings among people who have about the high number of nuclear power facilities that occupy their prefectures. Students are 18, 17, and 15 years old that are conducting nuclear surveys for the scumbag nuclear industry. What a dirtbag nuclear industry. Sorry about that. All are members of the Nuclear Power Investigation Group at their high school. Nuclear Power Investigation Group. Well, Dana, maybe you're being a bit hard on them. Actually, I think you're right. Asked about what kind of image or impression they have of nuclear power, with multiple answers permitted. 80% of respondents said, wait for it, dangerous. 80%. Big round of applause for them. Bless your hearts. It's still outrageous that children are in charge of, and then the media did skew it on the headline because most people won't read the story. I do wish that we were taught more about radioactive waste in school. And they do. They lie to you, manipulate you, and deceive you. Every single sentence is designed to trick and deceive and mold you. And they probably, at the same time, they want to give you Spider-Man backpacks and the Hulk backpacks and stuff like that. Hollywood is full of this brainwashing about the nuclear industry. Like the Hulk and Spider-Man are created by the nuclear industry to brainwash you and your children. And as you grow up with Spider-Man, your brain refuses to acknowledge there's an issue because subconsciously Spider-Man and the Hulk fill in the little tiny spot in your brain that says run. United States can get to 100% clean energy with wind, water, solar, zero nuclear. Zero nuclear. By 2026, you won't need anything but, it's going to dominate as renewables. By 2026, there's going to be another 4,800 gigawatts of renewables. This year was 290 gigawatts. That's equal to 333 nuclear power plants. Can you build 333 nuclear power plants in 12 months? Nuclear is bull crappy. My apologies. How to make up your mind about the pros and cons of nuclear power. How do you make up your mind about the pros and cons of nuclear power? You don't go to mainstream media typically, I can tell you that. French President Emmanuel Macron, or Mr. Puppet, has recently announced that France will invest $1 billion of French money, euros I guess, which is nothing. The nuclear industry needs 90% of that for administration, for starters. It's madness. They're so big, right? They consume everything on the planet at this stage. And then so we're forced to come out and try to push back with some common sense. Bruce Power, there goes to Canada right there, expands internship for Ontario Tech first year female nuclear engineering students because they're sick of all the geeks, right? And the geeks got them here, but the definition of stupid is knowing the truth, seeing the truth, but still believing the lies. Exclusively offering Canada's only School of Mass Destruction Nuclear Engineering University degree, Ontario Tech proudly announces the Bruce Power Engineering internship for the women's program. After 75 years, they're finally going to let women in.
I'm beginning to think there'll be no forced mating at all.
Yeah, no, well, don't worry.
I'm beginning to...
Yeah, there is. How a future U.S. president helped avert nuclear disaster near Canada. We covered this last night. This is a story that was propaganda. It was put out, and because it's pretty good propaganda, the nuclear industry made sure it was proliferated out. So the guy who ran the story originally is a notorious scumbag for the nuclear industry. And apparently, Godzilla is actually Prime Minister Carter. He was, because you know how Spider-Man got bit by a spider, became Spider-Man, and the Hulk got caught up in nuclear waste and became the Hulk. President Carter got lowered down into a melted reactor and became Godzilla, damn it. I got incontestable proof, unassailable proof. I got video, look at it. Looks just like Carter if you look really good. It wasn't a partial meltdown, it was a major meltdown. They brought in 1,000 people from the United States, not just Carter. I've been covering this story for years and years and years. It keeps cropping up different versions of this. It's absurd, right? Suggest that. They actually claimed that they lowered him on a rope down, like James Bond or something, down, and he took off a bolt off the reactor, and they had to pull him back up because there was too much radiation. It's meant to appeal to children, see? So Buddy put it up on his Facebook there, that story, if you read it. Brought explosions and was flooded with hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. But they claim they only lost 3 ounces of uranium. The whole story is absurd. It was a major pollution event. The industry is crazy. So why does he think it caught so many people attention? Jimmy Carter was the president who saved the day. Definitely resonated. Yeah. Commission experts call on EU not to label nuclear green. Wait, what? I actually had nightmares about this last night. I woke up 4 times thinking about it. Gotta stop reading myself to sleep because why do I read this shit all the time? The Commission experts call on the EU not to label nuclear green. I think that's a great idea. In fact, you should label it dirty. Nuclear power, first off, nuclear power plant, when you first operate it, the fuel pools are empty. That's 16, 18 months later, you start to put fuel in the pool. What I mean by that is, you change some of the reactor core. The stuff you're taking out, you're going to put it in a pool because it's hot, baby. But that's not what's really going on here, is it's still splitting atoms. And atoms are represented by fallout, and they never stop pulsing. You can't turn it off. There's no off switch. And so if they stop the nuclear power plant production right there, that fuel pool is going to boil off every day 100,000 plus liters. Each liter is going to have trillions of isotopes that'll pulse energy every second forever. That will happen every day, forever. That from those fuel, they're still splitting the atoms for hundreds of thousands of years. So eventually the whole environment of the entire planet, the entire biosphere, is going to be full of radiation, pulsing energy every second. That's global, that's called climate change, by the way. And a prime example of what Fukushima, for instance, looks like is this map here. Now, this is only the first 20 days. If you put another 10 days on that, you wouldn't see the rest of the planet. It's a continuous plume, a non-stop plume. That's the worst type, by the way. All the power plants, fuel pools are capable of creating plumes like that also, but much worse. And that's exactly what fuel pools do. Around 1,000 of them worldwide are pumping out fission product. And then the insidious part of this story is, including that one there, let me put that one there on the big screen for you first. That's actually farmland you're looking at there on the ground. And then all nuclear power plants, for some reason, love being set up in farmland because it's constant radioactive fallout. The plants suck that food up, and you buy it and die. or you get up to 1,800 diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. And so that's not an accident that they're doing that. Right? You don't... Okay, so you got Fukushima on top of that, covering the whole planet. So we see the whole food chain now is broken over the last 10 years. All the animals, and birds, and whales, and everything else are either missing, presumed exterminated, or shown up emaciated everywhere. Dealing with the do no significant harm principle in the taxonomy for the EU declaration of what's green, they conclude nuclear power. Nuclear may damage the environment due to the need to store it in underground bunkers, which is another for thousands of years. Well, it damages the planet constantly. But it's even worse than that because they're surrounded by farms. So they meet the definition of harm to people and the planet because food is shipped, product is shipped out that's radioactive from these farms constantly. And you're talking, this has been going on for 60 years. Then you got these plumes, and these can be created and are created by the spent fuel pools all day. These are permanent plumes. And every day it adds another plume. Each day you get another plume like that coming into the environment. So if you got a glass of water and you got a spoon, and you keep putting a spoon in the glass, what happens? At some point the glass is going to fill up. But for the next million years, you're going to keep taking that spoon and putting water in the glass. That's what nuclear does at every single fuel pool. There is no containment. They have to replace the water each day of about 120,000 liters for each pool. There's around 1,000 pools. So 120,000 liters times 1,000. And then multiply that by 1 trillion atoms per liter to get the snowstorm. And then multiply that by 365 days a year and 75 years. And then infinity, because that's how long it's going to last. So the do no significant harm principle means that nuclear is garbage. In fact, nuclear is so bad that the feds, Hanford, the government, the provincial or the state government in Washington had made a law that if you worked at Hanford nuclear site, they called it a nuclear reservation because they moved 2 Indian reservations out of that site. It's 585 square miles. It's like a sick joke for the nuclear industry, I think. They love attacking the indigenous population of wherever they're to by putting nuclear waste close by, or actually putting nuclear reactors close to them. We've seen that done quite a bit. And so if you work 8 hours at Hanford, you're entitled to a lifetime pension. If you worked at Hanford for a lousy 8 hours and got sick, you're entitled to a pension. And so the federal government was like, whoa, we can't do that because everybody, all the homeless and immigrants that we send there for day work will be entitled to a pension because we poisoned them. Nuclear doesn't respect borders, the radioactive fallout on top of that. Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer. Therefore, nuclear is not sustainable as a taxonomy for the EU, obviously. Officials admit deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up, but they didn't go to jail for it. We lied about the meltdown. It's a cover-up. It's unprecedented nuclear disaster. It's as bad as it gets. It's an unpardonable breach of trust. And everybody's like, Dana's fear-mongering. Nuclear scientists around the world are, Mom, come downstairs. Dana's fear-mongering again. Japan foreign minister, stop claiming food is safe. So does that meet the taxonomy for the EU? Worst case scenario was abandon Tokyo forever, not only evacuating. And abandoning Tokyo forever. So if your coal plant breaks down, do you got to abandon New York City? If your gas plant breaks down, you got to abandon Montreal. If your oil plant breaks down, you got to abandon Beijing. No, but if your nuclear power plant breaks down, you got to abandon Beijing, New York, and Montreal. Yes. Suzuki said it best when bye-bye Japan, evacuate the west coast of the northern hemisphere. That's some carbon green stuff there, mister, I tell you what. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time because of Fukushima, as the public, which you can't make the whole public on the planet sick without making all the other species on the planet sick. You should be sick to your guts that nuclear is still in business. To work at this carbon-free nuclear is equivalent to be given an order to die. And then you got to pay for your death ride home. And not only that, it's a dirty bomb factory. It's not just a disease factory and a death factory, it's a dirty bomb factory. Debris from near the nuclear meltdowns being ground up and burned in other parts of Japan. And they got a brand new incinerator at the nuclear power plant itself on top of that. There's nothing about nuclear that meets the zero carbon free or taxonomy for the EU or for anywhere else on the planet. Work at Fukushima plant to go on for 10,000 years. Longer than human history. And that's not, nuclear scientists are not going to be there for 10,000 years. They'll be homeless and destitute and victims of society because they hate you. They hate you. Look at their legacies. Even the United Nations, the creepy, despicable, disgusting, maniacal United Nations said, come on, man, you got to halt the children's return to the nuclear meltdown for God's sakes. Japan should not push residents back to the nuclear meltdown, said UN. Come on, this is ridiculous. The Finnish reactor was meant to start generating power in 2009, and the French Flamanville reactor was meant to start in 2012. Both are still not operational and are triple the anticipated costs. A decade later, both of them are still not running. And they're just incredible, despicable, filthy disease factories. Look at this. And surrounded by farmland. Nuclear energy, a geopolitical specter. The move is meant to help the Neanderthals, a.k.a. Netherlands, cut greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% come 2030. Lies, lies, and oh my God, more lies. So ex-CEO won't face charges in nuclear fraud. This is absurd. Like, they stole 10 billion, was it? And left nearly 6,000 scumbags jobless. They sent them to Fukushima. Shut your pie holes. Get on Tokyo Flight 101 and get your butt down to Fukushima. Lots of work down there for scumbags like you. Korea nuke victims denied state compensation. Once a victim, always a victim when it comes to nuclear. Poland narrows down nuclear sites. Poland. Well, like, this is absurd, by the way. It should be criminal charges for promoters of nuclear power. Hence, the reason we got a poll tonight. Got a big shot poll tonight for everybody. Should nuclear universities be prosecuted for crimes against humanity and exterminating the species on the planet, aka omnicide. 92% is a staggering, resounding yes. They should be prosecuted. Well, see, I don't know why Poland's bothering. If you look, last year was a big eye-opener for renewables. Last year was equivalent to 300 nuclear power plants where the renewables came online. This year was equal to 333 nuclear power plants where the renewables came online. And by 2026, to be an extra 4,800 gigawatts, which is equal to 5,500 nuclear power plants where the renewables. By the time that Poland builds a nuclear power plant, if they do go ahead and do it, everybody, including Poland, is going to be shaking their head. In 5 years' time, it's going to be obsolete technology. I'm sorry, 4 years' time. Definitely in 5 years. Because technology doubles every year, every 18 months, right? And German nuclear phase out to continue permanent closure by the end of next year. Bless their hearts. And that's the right thing to do. The operating licenses for 3 nuclear power plants expire at the end of 2021 and will not be renewed. And the plants will therefore go off grid by the end of 2022. Job well done. Owners of the closed nuclear plant face security violation fines for Oyster Creek. We call it kickbacks, right? $150,000 is that's tip money for the IAEA, for the mafia, the head of the nuclear mafia. Holtec Decommissioning International Limited has 30 days to pay the fine or contest it. And you know bloody well they're going to contest it. California is wasting its best chance at clean energy. Is that some kind of sick joke or something, calling nuclear clean? Nuclear, you got to have 2 coal plants just to run these things. At the Constipated Party 26, the military-industrial complex, aka United Nations Climate Conference, we done 13 videos on it because they started this on Halloween. Constipated Party 26 started on Halloween and ended 13 days later. You tell me that's not a death cult? It was widely acknowledged by leaders from around the globe that California's presence was widely... So this is what they do. They have this death cult meeting, and they just... It doesn't matter what country you're from, as long as you got nuclear power. And this was from Constipated Party 26. We hit them, and we hit them hard for 13 days there, man. Crazies, climate activists call for end of capitalism, which is the right thing to do. It's now under control. Put nuclear power plants like NuScale is putting their small modular reactors that don't even exist on the stock markets. That's capitalism, see? It's destroying everybody's future. Capitalism's okay, but you got to have a charter where you're held accountable. Right now, there's no charter to hold them accountable. So, and the problem with that is there's no incentive not to be evil. Let's go back and look at some other years of the constipated parties. There's been a few doozies over the years. Global warming author says, barcode everybody at birth. I like this one of my favorites. Climate change skepticism is a sickness that got to be treated. And humans are and Attenborough, right? Militant environmentalists call for execution and decisive ecological warfare. How about this one? Global warming deniers should be sentenced to death. I think people who deny Fukushima should be jailed for life anyway. Nuclear power is safe, cheap, efficient, and the only realistic way to maintain our standards of reliability and availability while eliminating carbon. This is absurd. Eliminating carbon is eliminating you. It's more like it. So this is a radioactive fallout model based on venting, not based on the actual nuclear meltdowns in Japan, of radiation covering the entire planet in 19 days. The model stops, but the plume doesn't. The plume keeps getting bigger, still coming out. It never stops. It's a continuous plume. It's still going on. You better wake up. The Made in Ontario nuclear injects billions of useless money into Ontario's economy and creates and sustains 22,000 high-skilled jobs annually, says Bruce Power executive. So, 22,000 people. This is the same as what they say about the farmers in Fukushima. So instead of arresting the farmer for growing food in a nuclear wasteland, and the food ends up killing and murdering people, hundreds of thousands of people, they blame you for being radiation phobia. Even though the farmers are growing and harvesting the food. It's hard to believe these stories. Like, no way, Dana. There's no way they're not harvesting food right alongside the bags. Dana, they don't do that kind of stuff. Guess what? They do that kind of stuff. And it's not just like a one-off or something. Harvesting food, growing it right alongside the nuclear waste, just give them a fine and take all the farming gear away from them. If they actually harvest the food, there should be a sniper shooting them, right? No, this was a picture from major Japanese media complaining because the farmer was being stigmatized that his food was radioactive. There's 60 million of these one-ton bags where the farmers are growing food, but the farmers never stopped growing food. I don't know. 22,000 jobs, so go ahead and murder everybody. Refurbishment on the final reactor in Canada is scheduled for July 2023. Right, so as soon as Fukushima happened, the Darlington and Bruce Power nuclear sites, the federal government immediately gave them $10 and $12 billion for refurbishment because they were worried sick the world was going to wake up and that'll be the end of nuclear. So give them the money now so you can't get rid of them. And now that the renewables are so efficient at extracting power from the sun and from wind, they're panicking again, and they're doubling down on nuclear power. But that's crimes against all Canadians. This is an omnicide against all species on top of that. There's no need to do it. It's stupid. It's backwards. And it's sick, and it's twisted, and it's wrong to do what they're doing. And 2033, in 2026, between now and 2026, renewables will be an extra 5,500 nuclear power plants where the renewables will be online in just the next 4 years. So in 12 years, which is what you're looking at there, and of course that's going to double each year, but just say there's 15,000 nuclear power plants, which is 3 times all the nuclear and fossil fuel that's currently on the planet. by the time they do the refurbishment. And you don't think that's being evil to go ahead and do this and lose all that money and energy and time on an antiquated and lethal to all species dinosaur generation operation. First batch of mixed oxide fuel begins trial. This is a new one that the Ruskies are doing. And they're going to remix the fuel, mixed oxide fuel each year, or each cycle. It's a really insidious because International Energy Agency in December this month sees renewables overtaking fossil fuels and nuclear by 2026, which is, because this is almost 2022, let's say 5 years. So in 5 years, this year alone was 290 gigawatts, is equal to 300 nuclear power plants in 12 months. And that surpassed 2020, which was 300 nuclear power plants worth of renewables. And last year, renewables accounted for all of the net growth as coal, natural gas, and nuclear power shrank. This year's record renewable electricity additions of 229 gigawatts are another sign that a new global energy economy is emerging. The agency said between 2020, this is the International Energy Agency, that between 2020 and 2026, renewables will grow by another 60% to over 4,800 gigawatts, which is roughly the size and capacity of all fossil fuel and nuclear power combined. Oh, welcome to Stupid. Couple get engaged at the site of the nuclear meltdown in Chernobyl. Honey, I promise to protect you. And nuclear. This literally got to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. You say love is blind? But it's stupid too, right? Oh, to be a monster named nuclear. I'm just heartbroken that the media is so freaking evil and the schools of mass destruction are so insidiously evil. We can't have a future with them doing what they're doing. So I wish both of them a wonderful half-life. And I wonder if there's going to be any fallout from being in the fallout. Paradise Lost. Inside the world's most radioactive places where people live with birth defects after a nuke bomb test by US and Russia. But he got 6 fingers on each hand. And both those top pictures are defects from radiation. Birth defects and cancers blight the tortured people who have the misfortune of living around nuclear. And more than 7 decades on from the first atomic bomb tests, the fallout continues to wreak havoc with these communities. Yeah, because it never goes away. South Australia traditional owners launched legal action to block a nuclear waste facility. So the natives who weren't allowed to vote on the nuclear dump that was being put on their land in Australia. How crazy is that, really? They're just in protesting. The Barngard, I'm going to butcher your names, Barngarla people hold native title rights over the site in Australia, southern Australia. And we covered this originally over and over and over as the story came out over the years. Were excluded from a community vote approving the development. And that they were excluded from the vote, which is similar to what Taiwan done at Orchard Island off Taiwan. They got the natives isolated out on Orchard Island. And they told them, we're going to build a cannon factory. It's going to be wonderful. It's just going to be brilliant. And we'd like to use your land. And they're like, well, that's great. We love cannon factories. It was for fish, like for salmon and stuff like that. And so they built a nuclear dump there. But they told the local natives it was a fishery cannery site. And what they're doing here, nuclear waste dump near the town of Kimba in South Australia, this is for medical waste. They need a deep geological repository for the excrements and urine and everything and nuclear materials. They're using the genocide machine. Right, you can't put something in you when it comes out as so toxic you need a deep geological repository. That can't help you or cure you. Right? Medicine doesn't work that way. And so the industry is actively genocide everybody on the planet, particularly the schools of mass destruction, by producing nuclear fables for for cancers. Most cancers caused by radiation fallout. It ends in your food, your water, and just a single atom in increments over decades can turn into a big tumor that can metastasize and end up throughout your whole body. But there's 1,800 illnesses you get from radiation, not just cancer. Right? There's Alzheimer's and dementia, and autism, and diabetes, and Down syndrome, schizophrenia, heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. 1,800 illnesses. A nuclear waste dump near the town of Kimba. And the natives weren't allowed to vote. And they own the land. It's their land. Have launched a legal campaign to block the federal government's plan to build a nuclear dump near the town of Kimba. They went in and bought off the town, enough people in town who knew nothing about nuclear. They brought in all the nuclear apologists to tell them it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. And it's prime farmland, which is the number one signature. How can they be more evil? Well, we'll put it in the nuclear farmland. We'll put it in farmland, nuclear in farmland, rather. So they got I can't even remember where the hell that's to now. I apologize. The government decided to raise women's marriage age to 21. Oh, India. Energy Department establishes office to boost carbon capture, nuclear power, and batteries. First off, Energy Department, which is the United States, establishes an office to boost carbon capture and to boost nuclear power. Oh, and batteries. Well, first off, carbon capture is evil, and so is nuclear power. Pumped hydro could deliver 100% renewable electricity. Batteries can't. And there's 500,000 places identified where you pump water up a hill. You pump the water up the hill, and with your excess energy, and when there's no wind or sunshine, the water goes down the hill. But you can have both sides of the coin. You can have your cake and eat it too. Startup pump for compressed air wind storage. That was $54 million. Experiment, and now there's an $800 million one being built This one pumps air down into a tunnel, and when the sun is not shining or the wind's not blowing, the compressed air, low pressure, 120 psi, they're actually able to capture the heat from the compression and store that. And so when they release the air, they can heat the air as it's coming out with the air they captured. And they can hold that heat for extended periods of time on top of that. So every single plant should have a couple of them, because then you don't have to run the plant for peak energy. You can use these things, right? Just sound ideas. If universities put some energy into that instead of stupid, idiotic batteries. North Korea is signaling, well, it's about lithium then, right? And lithium, they want to put lithium in everybody's water, they say, because there's less suicides. As if the government loved you or something. There is no government. We're going to have to get rid of that at some point in the future. They're so corrupt. You just got to put everybody in jail and start from scratch, right? Never allow a government's employee to have a government job is the first thing you got to do. North Korea is signaling on nuclear weapons in negotiations. So the United Nations killed 3 million of them, and then they napalmed every community in North Korea. But they were running campaign ads to nuke North Korea, because North Korea, they couldn't beat them.
There will soon be an end to this cold and wicked war, when those hard-headed communists get what they're looking for. Only one thing that will stop them and their atrocious fun: if General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb, there'll be fire, dust, and metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn them to the ground. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run if General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb.
Idaho experiment that showed nuclear power was more than a weapon. Well, nuclear power is a weapon. There's no maybe about that. That's radioactive fallout from nuclear power. Nuclear weapons have a hard time producing that. The biggest terrorist on the planet right now is the nuclear industry. So they ran 4 light bulbs. This huge operation with a coal plant running it, and they ran 4 light bulbs. We're supposed to celebrate that. The 70th anniversary of evil produced enough power to light up 4 shitty light bulbs. This is one of the hot cells with a 3-foot lead glass and manipulators on the inside there to tear apart. It's an army of idiots. Incredible army of idiots, yeah? And the scientists are incredible goblins. Unbelievable, hideous, monstrous goblins. Revolting goblins. Wrecked Fukushima nuke plant one step closer to releasing radioactive water into the Pacific. Now, we talked about that earlier. Let's talk about it again. Cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. Right? That's how you knock down their narrative. See how I done that? It was really straightforward, right? Wrecked was the right word. Fukushima nuclear plant one step closer to releasing radioactive water into the Pacific. Really? You're thinking 2012, when cesium was dispersed throughout the entire ocean from the surface to the ocean floor. And that it was airborne, covering the entire planet. And they got people thinking that they got to worry about the tanks. So the tanks should look over here, not over there. That's why you see people like me censored so heavily. Fukushima radiation is still circling the globe, and the levels are consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. Oh, did I mention that cesium and uranium, plutonium, and americium, neptunium, etc., 1,000 times, remain dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor? Did I forget to mention that? And that radiation is circling the globe and consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle forever. Fukushima's once destroyed coast is making a comeback. Highly contaminated marine snow covered the seafloor at least 2,000 kilometers from Fukushima. Radioactive plume map shows Fukushima contamination headed towards Hawaii. Again, see, you got to realize the plume covered the planet. This one here, in instance, is 20 days. The ocean was covered in less than 6. Surface to the ocean floor. TEPCO to begin coating the seafloor with cement mixtures because fuel rods were thrown right out into the ocean and carried out into the ocean by the tsunami debris on top of that. So they had to cement the ocean because there was so much radiation coming up. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. So does it sound like they got that contained, anybody? Anybody? Is there anybody out there? How do you contain that? You can't. That's the Xenon 133, and they've done studies of it where it showed up 450,000 counts per minute in Washington, for instance. So when you hear deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world, that's not a opinion, that's a fact. And hopes to have much of Fukushima cleaned up by last year. Way to go, guys. The 1,000 tanks storing the contaminated water will reach their capacity next year. Well, so they're talking about filtering water. Yeah, they were talking about filtering water. TEPCO to abandon the Areva system, which was a water filtration system. And for the last 3 years, the water filtration system had been unused and kept out of operation. TEPCO was unable, 2014, by the way, 2014 and 2014. TEPCO was unable to bring contaminated water issues under control at Fukushima Daiichi. The Advanced Liquid Processing Systems, ALPS, has yet to function reliably. That's 2014. And there are parts of the site they can't even go into. You think they really got it under control? The homeless and the victims of society? Bless their hearts. TEPCO says groundwater bypass, by the way, operation not having an effect. So it's not just tanks you got to be thinking about, which are empty. It's designed to trick you into thinking it didn't kill the Pacific. TEPCO officials admitted the groundwater bypass operations are failing to reduce the tons of water from entering the site. And they don't know when, if ever, the pumping operations will have any tangible effects. In June, TEPCO was also forced to admit its ice wall operation, will also intended to control groundwater, was also unsuccessful. And they failed to deliver on a promise to install a fence, which was going to cost $1 billion. The government agreed not to publicize the arrangement, and TEPCO did not undertake the work they promised to complete. And then the ice wall operation will not meet expectations, 2014. They couldn't get it to freeze. And they admit finally that the ice wall will not stop the groundwater. Which is an interesting question, because why didn't they build a real wall? I know that sounds crazy, but new map of radioactive iodine released from Fukushima Daiichi. They flew over the ground, Americans, at 1,000 feet above the ground. And it was 3 million becquerels of just the iodine 131, 20 kilometers away. So even if it was just that only, and I'm showing you endless maps, so you know it's not, it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. Every time it rains in Japan, a lot of it washes down to the coastline through the radioactive. So this radiation radiates all the plants, all the pollen is radioactive, all the spores from the mushrooms are radioactive. All the foliage that falls off in the fall and winter time gets washed out to the coastline, that's radioactive. Rocks and pebbles that gets washed out into the ocean are radioactive. See, if I make this radioactive and I lay this somewhere, it becomes radioactive. I can take it up and put it somewhere else, it'll become radioactive in that spot. But if I put anything where I had it to, that becomes radioactive. It's subtle, depending on how much we're really talking about. What we're talking about here is not subtle. This is huge numbers. And they're only acknowledging gamma. They're not acknowledging alpha or beta or neutrons. TEPCO to build a sea tunnel for the release of the treated water. Again, this is a fable. Treated. See that right in the headline. And so 100 million becquerels per cubic centimeter. These are absurd numbers, by the way. Now, if you filter that, you stick that in a filter, the filter after about half an hour, and now you stop putting that through the filter, and you put just fresh water through the filter. Well, the fresh water is coming out the other side of the filter is more radioactive than that stuff. Because that's how it actually works, see? So think of an oil filter, dirty oil filter. Now put a fresh water line on that and pump fresh water through it. Do you think there's going to be fresh water coming out the other side of it? But we're talking about radiation. Radiation has some incredible, stupid attributes like death and diseases. Rolls-Royce to launch groundbreaking nuclear solution for clean energy and fuels. Because it's going to run on mixed oxide fuel. But once again, right, the winds are changed now to renewables. And in 15 years, or 12 years, you're going to see the equivalent of 15,000 nuclear power plants where the renewables come online. Probably a lot more than that, actually, right? Maybe even double that. But we don't need that much. We can't use that much on the planet. So why bother with nuclear? Is that a stupid question? Russia's nuclear modernization shows no sign of stopping. No, because the rush is on now because the world is waking up, see? The rush is on right now because the world is waking up. And there's nothing but zombies and robots at this stage. They're doing it for a paycheck at this stage. Yeah, putting on Russia's nuclear-powered submarines. Well, we don't want to put the money back in the country. We just want to put it into the military-industrial complex. So that's like, Putin is a dictator. Vladimir is a dictator. He's not a president or prime minister. He's a dictator, yeah? Your power crunch shuts down factories because they put all their eggs into one basket, right? 70% of the country running on nuclear. Now, the crazy thing about this story is that each nuclear power plant needs 2 cold oil or gas plants to work. So when the nuclear power plants are shut down, theoretically, these coal, oil, and gas could start generating electricity for the community. But see, nuclear power plant can't run their site without 2 dedicated coal, oil, or gas plants. It's so stupid, such a stupid and disgusting industry on top of that. They're such cowards, the people that work in the industry. They're incredible monsters. They work very hard to make sure the industry can survive another year. France, which usually exports power, has almost 30% of their reactors shut off. We need to suck up supplies from neighbouring countries to keep the lights on, as severe nuclear outages curb generation in the coldest months of the year. Well, that's what you call idiots for doing that, see? That's actually idiots. And here's some more. The Emirates, UAE nuclear plant in final stages of commissioning, which means a couple of more years, basically. During the inspection tour, the visiting International Atomic Energy Agency's Director General shit for brains. So out with the old Director General, in with the new devil. Grossy. You got a gross. That's a perfect name for that guy. Gross. This man will sniff your bicycle seats. He's a despicable creature, this person is. You got the planet now being exterminated by radiation, and everybody's got one thumb up their butt and one in their mouth. It turns out killing the Iranian nuclear deal wasn't such a good idea after all, said the mad lunatic scientist. Laser nuclear fusion is getting closer for Australia. Does anybody believe that one? These people are lunatics, eh? Oversee a team of 19 researchers across 10 universities. Way to pull the team together, man. You don't need it. Turns out we don't need fusion. And so fusion is in panic mode because they know just in the next couple of years, the nuclear or renewable revolution, the renewable renaissance is started, right? And once people realize what nuclear's been up to for the last 75 years, even their own children will try to curb stomp them in the near future. Helium available to increase with new supply deal here in Canada. Another pipe dream. Scum industries, man. Industrial gas joint Air Liquide has signed a long-term agreement. Wow. To purchase helium from a Canadian nuclear power firm. If it's Canadian, you know it's going to be scumbags. One lonely voice for the link between nuclear energy and gender equality. One lonely voice. Do I need to say any more? One scumbag. One lonely voice. Somebody who's making a living in order to keep the job now. They got to be a propaganda tool for the industry. And more young African women associate their professional careers with nuclear energy. For every successful nuclear energy career, 6,000 people will die. A nuclear communications specialist now. Africa for Nuclear founder and host. And a woman in the Nuclear Global Excellent Award 2021 winner. A Nuclear Global Excellent Award. It's just like, you know, when you bite into an ice cream, your brain is going like that. Every time I see shit like this, my brain is going like, fuck, don't, just run away, Dana. Ah, yes, extending Kohlberg's, Africa's only nuclear reactor, which is on a fault line and is extremely brittle. is operating life is irresponsible, says an expert. I like this guy a lot. He's got my heart. Retrofitting the Colbert power station was more likely to provoke a catastrophe than preserve energy. They got cracks in this place too, right? And it's on an earthquake zone. Nuclear waste ship. Wait, what? Nuclear waste ship destined for Tanzania ordered back to port of origins. I haven't got a good handle on that story yet. They're very vague about everything they're talking about. The Tanzania Atomic Energy Commission is Wednesday, December 22nd, said the ship that was laden with nuclear waste was loaded with nuclear waste, was detained in Kenya and ordered back to its port of origins. They were going to go dump it off Africa somewhere by the sounds of it. Was disguised as padlocks and other hardware items destined for Tanzania. It was supposed to unload in Tanzania a nuclear waste ship. And the government was like, we're just going to set it back. What about prosecuting the people that were going to take it? How about giving them life in jail plus a couple of hundred? Radioactive consignment, they say. Ship carrying nuclear waste material is seized. It was destined for their country, but we can't figure out what the hell is going on. Europe's power crunch shuts down factories as prices hit the record highs. Look at this, nuclear power station surrounded by farms. What's the odds of that, I wonder? The NRC are preparing to cite Davy Bessie nuclear plant on safety issues. They're falling like dominoes now. Owner failed to inspect the emergency generator switch for 15 years. How can you forget that one, man? It's a culture of idiots. Nuclear waste from Pilgrim moved to storage facility. Really? I didn't know they had a repository. Well, they don't, Dana. I said, you're not supposed to read the story, just read the headline. The remainder of the spent nuclear fuel cooling in a pool at the shuttered Pilgrim nuclear power station has been transferred from the fuel pool. Like, you don't even want the water from that pool in your community, let alone the fuel itself, has been transferred to containers and moved to an on-site dry storage location. And then they show you this picture here. That's not fuel, okay? You don't put fuel in drums and barrels. Demons, huh? Google Maps user spots unescorted nuclear submarine off the U.S. coast, which is probably just an American sub. Or even, well, it can't be a Canadian sub. Yeah, we got 4 of them, but they're all at the West Edmonton shopping mall. For $2 you can go down and walk around. Fuel loading has started at Belarus Nuclear Power Plant Unit 2. And we covered this for many years now, this story. I didn't think they'd actually get to this stage. They still got a long way to go before they get it working, though. Westminster source claims government nuclear waste agenda influenced Columbia's council reform. So Columbia is right alongside of an ongoing nuclear meltdown in the United Kingdom. It's right by what's now known as Sellafield, was originally known as Windscale. And they had a mixed oxide fuel facility. They still do, by the way, fuel reprocessing, they call it, facility that has polluted the entire Atlantic and the Arctic with the help of La Hague in France, of course. Westminster source claims government nuclear waste agenda. This is such a disgusting story. And these places are all, this is supposed to be the future repository they want to put there in farmland. Everything is vented, right? So farmland is the choice. Plans were announced in the summer to abolish the existing 7 councils in Columbia, replace them with 2 for the entire county. That way the government got control, right? The government has been accused of choosing the East-West split for political motivations, and the recent claim is that the LGR benefits the government's agenda to see an underground nuclear waste facility in Cumbria, which is plagued with cancer clusters in the children because they're eating food from the local farms that are polluted by Sellafield nuclear meltdown. Still has 8 million litres a day going into the Atlantic Ocean there. JV with SNC, this is Canadian, Quebec rather, leveling wins a $400 million CANDU reactor refurbishment. And you're talking like 2033 by the time they finish all of the refurbishments. And by then there's going to be 3 times more renewables than the planet needs, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. So we officially conquered it. It's just going to take us a couple more years to finish building it. Nukes on the brinks. Yep. A recent letter writer mentioned there were so many nuclear submarines, ours and theirs, cruising the oceans, raising an increasing possibility of an accident. In fact, since 1950, there have been 32 submarine accidents, known as broken arrows, because they're nuclear. Congress approved a much criticized $780 billion budget for the Pentagon in spite of an end of the $1 trillion war in Afghanistan. $1 trillion to get 10,000 Taliban. They fired 5.5 million rounds a day, every day for 9 years to get 10,000 Taliban. 5.5 million. I'm sorry, a month. Each month. Germany has been away from nuclear power, or is it a day? I can't remember anymore. Hang on. Not very often. I get confused because I'm at this all the time. Today happens to be that day. Let's flush it out. Yeah, 5.5 million rounds per month in Afghanistan for 9 years to get 10,000 Taliban. Defense Minister comments on submarine spies and nuclear weapons. The stupidest looking thing on the planet. Literally the stupidest thing on the planet. You can't use it. You can't shoot nuclear missiles at each other. It's stupid. Why have it? Just get fake ones. You don't need real ones. You can't use it. United Arab Emirates is a significant partner to the International Degenerate Agency. The Director General Grossi of the IAEA, the Weasel, Mr. Weasel, as you know him as the man who will sniff your bicycle seats. In 1983, bicycle seat sniffer graduated from the Catholic University of Argentina with a bachelor in political science, and now he's a mass murderer with the International Atomic Energy Agency Mass Murder Organization. Don't lose your mind reading mainstream energy chronicles. Try these for immediate relief. On the campaign trail, Joe Biden threatened to throw oil executives in jail for their role in producing the world's fuel supplies, showing he meant business on his first day in office. Remember that? I remember that. And Biden made a big scene of crushing Keystone XL like a cockroach. Remember that? I covered it. 18 months later, he's looking shell-shocked, and not a day under 120. President Biden was imploring OPEC to produce more oil. So he wanted to throw the executives in jail. And which kind of reminds me, we got a poll there tonight. Should nuclear schools of mass destruction's universities be prosecuted for crimes against humanity and omnicide. And we got a resounding 90%, an amazing 10% says no, they don't want to be prosecuted. But that's what you expect of a criminal, right? But there's a correct 42% people says, yeah, stick them in jail, Dana, do it. I'm with ya. Cabinet approval to sign accord on banning nuclear weapons. Oh, we're going to ban it. The nuclear industry will get you for that, man. You can't, that's sedition in the nuclear industry. Charlotte E. Sanders, a mechanical engineering co-author, Mark Sanders, are they related? Have published their manuscript, their manifesto, A World's Dilemma Upon Which the Sun Never Sets, the Nuclear Waste Management Strategy, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates. Oh yeah. Spent fuel and nuclear waste management market is thriving worldwide. Gee, I wonder why. There's no repositories anywhere on the planet. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Nuclear radiation detector market. That's the one to get your money in. If you're gonna invest money in the nuclear industry, that's the one you want to do, baby. Los Alamos National Laboratory. I can't remember. They got 6,000, 12,000 shipments. It was their shipments, by the way, that blew up at WIP. But they got around, I don't know the exact number. We covered it. It wasn't that long ago. And it's so hard to believe anything they say on top of that, right? And they got one of the biggest freshwater aquifers in the United States is right underneath Los Alamos. So it ain't no aquifer no more, baby. And their new bomber is their newest plane is incredible work of art. It costs more to build that than a lot of countries' gross product, national product is each year. I mean, how many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of those bad boys? 2,000? Or 2 million. I say 2 million. How many suicide bombers does it take to equal an aircraft carrier is a better question, Dana. I agree. I totally agree with you. Moron of the Year award goes to the moron, and he's got camouflage pants on. Like that's gonna help you. It's fucking stupid, man. If stupid had a face, that'd be it right there. And that's what he's saying, honey, I'm stupid about you. That's what he's saying. She's like, oh my God, you're proposing to me at a nuclear meltdown. I got the best husband in the whole damn... So what do you got to do to get 31 likes around here? You got to juggle fucking nuclear scientists or something like that? Their brains? Yeah, well... It took 6 hours non-stop. I'm getting better at it to do the show tonight, get it all together and get the graphics put in there and blah, blah, blah. And then sat here and we've been... here for 1.5 hours. So 7.5 hours work. So I do so much work, it makes me sick sometimes. I don't mind it. I like it, right? Don't get me wrong. It's just... I'd rather be out looking for species randomly, so at least I can get outdoors. And so how did we do tonight on the poll? Let's check the poll out. Woohoo! We got 90 votes. I got 31 thumbs up. That's amazing. And if you work hard for a whole decade, you too can get like 30 people on your show. And 30 thumbs up. Kind of brings a tear to the eyes. Let's see in the poll, I suppose. If you're watching this later, you can give me a thumbs up instead of a voting, or vice versa. I'm exhausted. So we got a lot of snow coming down. I'm gonna have to get out there and look for tracks. And we got fresh snow coming down each day. And ran into the ground. And we can't even afford gas, actually, for the quad at this stage. But anyway, we'll figure it out. I'll get out there. And so we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Let me say goodnight to a few people. I'm always surprised when the show is wrapped up. I was like, wow, I made it. I made it. Andrew B, which is CFINSTR. Mike Mansfield. Hi, everybody. Colette. Hi, Colette. James Lucid. James. William. IXOAIX. Yep, something. William. Sandra Churchill. Hi, everybody. Anna C. 3P answer. Patrick. Good night, everybody. Have a great night, great day. Tomorrow. It all starts again for me. I got a 24-hour race to get tomorrow night's show ready. And chat. Oh. I accidentally made somebody a moderator. Sorry about that. Good night, everybody. Jeffrey Brown. Hi, Jeffrey. Port Angeles. Angelica. We're just almost down to the names to the most recent comments. We'll call it a night. The show went pretty good tonight, all things considered. They were all today's news stories. Robert Nearad. Yearloft. He's number 31. Or she or them. Blue Jay. Good night, everybody. Ash, and you're supposed to receive. You're welcome, everybody. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. Thank you for coming by and checking it out. No one should thank me. I'm doing this regardless, right? Got into war for everybody. We are taking no prisoners from the nuclear industry. They're not taking any prisoners. We shouldn't either. Mutant Botanical Garden. Hellos. Everybody's doing good. Your friends and your families and your loved ones. I wish there was more people doing what I'm doing in the context of running educational programs 5 days a week. I wish there was 100 or 1,000 people. I don't know why everybody's putting in abbreviated stuff. I don't. Anyway, it looks like we made it through, did we? You guys have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Tomorrow night might be an easy night on the brain and just do, because we still got, let me see here, right quick. We still got, I can't see the number clearly, 850 pictures that we haven't got up on the internet yet from Fukushima. Because we've done several presentations on just pictures of the reactors recently. Part one, 2, and 3. And probably need 2 more shows to get the extra 850 pictures out there. And then before that, last week we had done a picture of, or a show on screen captures of 736 pictures that were released from a drone in January of this year, which showed all the reactors redacted. And so that was most definitely a warning for humanity to do something like that. That took real guts. And nobody reported on that fact that they were all redacted. And of course, you know what I'm like. I'm going to zoom the shit out of every picture that they release. It's just the way it is with me. We'll see everybody soon. You have a great night, folks. Great day tomorrow. I got lots to get ready anyway for tomorrow night's show. It never stops here. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. Take care now.